Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City. The Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Rene Dreyfus and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
Yo, welcome back.
Yo, yo, yo.
We're on a streak.
We are on we're not streaking. We are not streaking, but we're on a streak. Lots of podcasts.
Yeah, two in a row.
Two in a row.
People are going to get, it's too, they're going to be too comfortable.
I am so excited, though. I am really, 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 really happy to have one of my amazing best friends, my brother in martial arts, the man who's, I walked that martial art path with so long, and his name is Andrés Carlstein. He is a man of so many talents, a true Renaissance man, great martial artist. I just want to say hello and thank you for coming on the podcast, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Renee. It's an honor and a pleasure.
So, it's great. So, some of you guys, I've talked about you on the podcast before, and I mentioned you a few times that, and I think one of the things I would like to talk about, of course, people don't realize that Andrés is an amazing author, and he has a lot of fantastic books out. One, which actually is one of my favorite books ever, which I'd like to talk about as well. But I started training with him way back in, when did we start, in 2000, was it? It was like 2000?
I think it was I believe in 2001, before the Twin Towers were hit. We were training together up or down there in Church Street, boxing, above the Church Street boxing gym. Right
on the third floor. So we both joined this gym run by Marco Santos, who is a representative, and his brother Marcio, and representative of the Hagen Machado organization. And I walked in, and I saw this really scary looking tall guy. And he mean mugged me. But
Come on, that's not true. Actually, Renee, you know where I think we first met? I was actually at a tournament. I think it was called the Ground Control Tournament, and I was competing with a fellow teammate. I believe his name was Alexei Lebedev. And we were training, and we went to this tournament. I actually saw you there, and you were training and competing, and then we ended up chatting briefly with you. We saw you compete in your division and stuff, and then Alexei and I competed. We actually, at that tournament, we happened to both win we were the same weight.
That's
so
right.
we were
it was in
fighting
New Jersey,
in the same
right?
division. Yeah.
And I remember.
Yeah, and that's where we first met you, and then you saw us performing, and you told me later that you said that seeing how our team did, you were thinking, oh, I really like to train with these guys, and that's how I think you ended up coming to Marcos's.
Well, no, it's funny because, yes, that's probably true. I actually totally forgot that, but I actually trained with Hagen Machado first in California because my sister lived there, and for just a couple days. And I was like so blown away. And I said, I live in New York. He's like, oh, well, we have this New York affiliate. And that was Christmas of, 99, 2000. It had probably about 2000, right? Christmas 2000. And, or somewhere like Thanksgiving. I think it was maybe Thanksgiving. I went to visit my sister sometime. I forgot when it was. And then I trained with there a couple days. And I met all their guys. And I remember Ryan, he came up to visit us, Ryan Gregg. And a couple of the guys, I met him, and then they're like, oh, we have this affiliate in New York. But then I don't think I joined right away. And I remember we went to that tournament, and I think I saw you guys, and it was like, oh yeah, this is where I should go, because I actually had totally forgotten that, but you're absolutely right. But I remember my first day, and you were very intimidating.
Oh man. I thought I was a nice guy.
You are a nice guy. Just a big guy. And I remember this clear as day. I judo tossed you with a taitoshi, which is actually not one of my major throws, but somehow I got you. This is the only time I think I've ever been able to throw you. And then you're like, it's on. And then we fought like cats and dogs. And then from that moment on, right after that, we shook hands, we're sitting against the wall talking, and I think we both knew we were going to be friends forever. It was like, we just got it out. We're like, oh, and I'll tell you, whatever martial arts skill that I developed is thanks to you, because, people, we say that we need a teacher, we need this, I'm telling you, the most important thing you need, the absolute most important thing you need in your martial journey is a brother, a buddy to be there to meet you. And I remember there are times I asked you, Andrés, can you meet me at the gym at this time to train? And man, I have to say thank you because there was not one moment, one time where you ever said no. I know that. It's a fact. Every time I asked you to come and train with me, off hours, you're like, okay, let's do it. And you were always there for me. And, one of the pictures I treasure in one of my fights, I have a picture of you hoisting me up on your shoulders. And that is actually one of my favorite pictures. And it symbolizes to me that I couldn't have been there. I couldn't have gotten good without you because I'm on your shoulders. And that is really what that picture means to me.
You know what's so funny and ironic about that, Renee? You got mad at me that I did that because I was so excited. You fought that fight and it was crazy. It was a crazy fight.
I don't remember that.
That MMA fight was like almost one of these underground leagues or something in New York. They weren't supposed to be doing it. They had the whole like no MMA and no NHB in New York. And so we go to this thing and you're competing. You're fighting this guy. And I remember you had him in I think it was in a triangle, and you started elbowing him in the head. And it was a brutal fight. You guys were going at it tooth and nail, and you ended up winning. I was so excited for you and happy you weren't hurt, because he had picked you up. He's strong. I think he had picked you up and tried to slam you from that position and stuff. And anyway, after all that, I was so excited. I just ran and I just grabbed you and threw you up on my shoulders. And afterwards, and I was like, so excited. And then afterwards, I put you down and you were like, oh man, that's not humble. That's not me. Don't do that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Sorry, Renee.
Well, that kind of sounds like me, but anyway, thank you.
Thanks for doing it.
I couldn't contain myself, man. I was just too happy for you.
Well, that picture means so much to me. And a lot of times I just kind of go look at it and I'm just thankful that you're in my life, and through thick and thin and so many ups and downs, I could always count on you to be my training buddy. And the other thing is, let me tell you, you're a training buddy in another sense. And this is super important because, and you don't remember this, but I do. There was a stretch of 8 months. 8 months, Matt, figure this out, right? You don't train, but imagine this. 8 months where we would spar, and we probably spar twice a day, every day, at least twice a day, right? 8 months where Andreas just kicked that living crap out of me for 8 months straight. And he would tap me from the exact same position every single time. And I would go home and I'd want to cry. I'd want to cry. Like, motherfucker, I got the same.
What position are you talking about?
I'm in bottom turtle. You're in top turtle. Always. I would always get there, and then you'd tap me out. You'd either put me in a guillotine, an anaconda, or you take my back. One of those three. But usually it was just like a anaconda kind of thing. And I would just walk in and get tapped all the time. And I remember 8 months, every single match ended that way. Like, this sucks. This sucks.
Well,
but it made me so well.
Yeah. This whole thing about turtle position. I for some reason, I don't know why, in my mind, I've always been oriented for street fighting and for self-defense on the street, right? That's always been my focus. And so I know, obviously, turtle is a sport position. You're training, and you got to be able to defend from different angles, etc. But I don't have a lot of respect for turtle.
Yeah,
because if you're in turtling on the street, you're basically admitting that you're going to die.
And it shows in MMA.
You're just going to get
TKOs from turtle.
Get beat down.
TKOs from turtle are the number one TKO position in MMA. So it just shows. It's absolutely, you're 100% correct.
I didn't even know that, and to me, it makes total sense, and it's just shocking to me. And so whenever I would see somebody turtle, I just have like this kind of sense of like, oh really? And then I would just go after them, because it's like you're just conceding defeat. It felt like, and obviously I know there's a lot of really effective fighters who do sport jiu-jitsu from turtle, and I'm not denigrating them in any way. But in terms of my attitude at the time, when turtle hadn't been so developed, that's kind of where my thinking was.
In my defense, I was trying to do a takedown, and then you just had a really good sprawl. so in my defense, but that being said, yes, I was a turtle. And but anyway, let's dial it back a little bit.
It's so funny.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna just.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to argue one point about you painting this one-sided picture of my winning. You don't think of it this way, perhaps, but I remember months and months and months where it was every single day, how is Renee going to catch my legs? How am I going to get footlocked? And it was constant, infuriating, frustrating thing, because I have long legs. I got, a 34-inch inseam. I'd be sitting there doing something, and I'd be like, well, damn it. I let Renee get below me. Now he's going to get my feet. As soon as their hands were on my feet, I was like, I got to put my foot on his butt. I got to get away from him. What do I do? Get his hands away from my feet.
Yeah, no, it's funny because we have the same, it's the same story, but basically we made each other better. And that's what it is. And whatever, thing I had to get an advantageous position, it made you better. And the things you had to get advantages over me made me better. And right now, when I go to bottom turtle, like if I'm shooting a takedown, I know all the ins and outs of that position, how to keep myself safe from strikes, from anacondas, from taps, because of training with you. And then I don't expose myself, and I finish the takedown in a way that and I'll tell you, you know what, also, my student won at black belt. His name is G, and he won at black belt. He's a purple belt, but he competes at black belt. He shot in, he sprawled. The guy was trying the move that you always do. And then I showed he did the counter that I would do. And then he got up to dogfight, took him down, passed him, mounted him, and submitted him. And it was awesome. It was like you and me as a generation went to the next generation. And that was our first big win at black belt as a purple belt, a big win. And it was just like you could see the lineage of the technique. I'm like, no, this is what happens here. This is, and I'm just recounting, things that you did to me. but it's great. It's great. And that's why I'm saying it's always important. The most important thing is you have a brother in arms. At the end of the day, martial arts is this band of brothers. It's this kind that brings us together, and it brings us together in a way that's so. The bond is so strong. It's like going to war, and you need you need that. You need a friend, and you were there for me.
Totally.
And I hope I was there for you. I
couldn't agree more. It's funny, we were laughing about this. No, and you did the same thing for me, of course. I mean, I wouldn't be half the fighter that I am, because so much of what I had to learn was how to deal with somebody who's faster and lighter than me. And you're so sneaky, so crafty, so quick. And your mind was always working. If I fell asleep on you for a second, I was caught. It was like I couldn't take my mind off of what you were doing for a second, or that was the end, right? And that's how sharp you have to be to fight against somebody like you, that thinks like you and moves like you, and is always coming up with new ideas. And it was amazing. But it's when I was laughing about this the other day, because I saw a meme posted online, and I think Christian Montez had posted it on his Facebook page, and he was saying it showed a picture of Game of Thrones and Arya Stark, and saying her victory against this guy, against the antagonist, it should be credited largely to her two instructors, and shows Cirio Farrell and the other guy that taught her. And I said, actually, I think the real hero there is Waif. The girl who showed up and kicked her butt every single day on the mats.
That's exactly
right.
It
made her better.
Yeah, it made her better. Your team, your peers, the person you come in as a white belt, and we started white belt, we got blue belts together, we got purple belts together. We went up the ranks. The person who's in your cohort is probably the most important person to you, and it's the person you want to beat the most too, which sometimes is a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. It's the person that, you kind of judge yourself against, which is, again, can be a good thing and a bad thing. But it's also that you cry together, you bleed together, you win together, you lose together. And it's this wonderful journey. And it's, people talk about the best thing about martial arts is that friendship. But, it's like not like any other friendship. I think the closest thing is people go to war. And that's something that I treasure. But, I just want to dial it back and just tell me a little about yourself, and what got you started in martial arts. And Matt is sitting here. He's always patient. I never let him talk, but I'm sure he has a lot of questions for you too. But what got you? I know you've been doing martial arts a long time. You started in shoot fighting, right? Or no, you started in Taekwondo.
No, actually.
Right?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I mean, like every kid of my generation, I think I wanted to be Bruce Lee. But where I grew up, there was no kung fu, so I ended up getting into Taekwondo, and there was a Taekwondo school and a karate school, and the karate school sounded less like kung fu than Taekwondo, so I was like, okay, I'll check that out. So I started doing that, and I was really into it. And I did it. I got really lucky too, because the school I trained in was Sang Lee's Taekwondo Academy in Binghamton, New York, actually in Vestal. And that school ended up being, you hear a lot about the reputations of the McJojos and stuff like that. This was the complete opposite. The instructor, Sang Lee, went on to become the Olympic coach for the United States, and then his heir, Master Choi, became the junior Olympic coach. And these guys were serious business. When Master Choi showed up, he had been in the Korean Army. He had played soccer for the national team in Korea. He was a serious athlete, a legitimate fighter, and just super hardcore. And he showed up and basically turned everybody, everybody that he could, he turned into killers, basically. He was serious business. And so I trained there from the ages of about 12 till 18. I got my black belt after 6 years, and when I was 18. And then I went to college and I started studying other things, including Tai Chi, which I did for about a year and a half. I studied Muay Thai kickboxing at a place in Penn State College Martial Arts Academy. I also studied Kali, and I took briefly a semester of judo. I would have kept doing it, but I had too many martial arts going on at the same time. Plus, I was trying to, at that point, study to get into medical school. And actually, I had heard about, I went to a seminar for Kali with Dan Inosanto, and there I saw Bob Bass do a demonstration with Dan Inosanto of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And although I'd seen the UFC and heard about it, that was my first experience of actually seeing it live. And I think Bob Bass, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was a Machado black belt.
Yes, he is. He's one of the Dirty Dozen. I've actually trained with him, and he's like an amazing guy. His academy actually is literally like 6 doors down from where my sister lives. And oh,
no kidding.
Yeah, and he's a really, really nice guy. He's really small and super technical.
Well, that's what it seemed like watching him perform, and I thought, oh man, this is really great. I'll have to check this out sometime. So, but that was a kind of early exposure, and it's interesting because it was all in the side of the Machado lineage that we stayed for so long. But that was my first real exposure, and then so I had applied to medical school, and I actually got accepted, and I had a year before I was supposed to go, and in that time I decided to ride a motorcycle to Argentina, and that's when I ended up doing that motorcycle trip. So I rode a bike there over about the course of a year or so, and it was on that trip also that I decided I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be a writer, and that's kind of how I found my way slowly to where I am now as teaching at the University of Iowa. I teach creative and scientific writing in the science department, and I also am writing fiction on the side. And so that's kind of like what I'm doing these days. But so after
you got back from Argentina, that's when you stayed in New York?
Right. Well, yes. And actually, when I was in Argentina, for about 6 months, I was living in Buenos Aires. I kind of settled into an apartment for a little while. I got a girlfriend. I was training. I started going to this martial arts school where they had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was my first real training experience. It was great. It was under Freddy Sucata Jiu-Jitsu in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and it was super fun. I met this amazing guy, kind of like you, but in terms of it being a friend and a training partner, that serious training. We had this epic. He was a white belt at the same time, but unlike you, he was much bigger than me. He was taller, like probably 6'4", and heavier than me, very strong. We had this epic match where basically we both knew nothing, but Freddie, for whatever reason, wanted to see us fight.
White belt death
match.
Just
horrible to watch. What's that?
White belt death match.
Yeah, exactly. It's just two clueless, strong dudes going at each other, and we fought for like 40 minutes, and it was pathetic because we didn't know how to choke. We didn't know how to do anything. And I remember that was great. It was fun to learn this way. And I remember though the time that really shocked me with jiu-jitsu was a blue belt had been training for 6 months, and I'd been training martial arts since I was 12 or 11. I thought I was serious business, and this blue belt had been training for 6 months. He got me in the mount. I couldn't get out, and I was like, oh my God. And I come from this traditional, side of it, which is like, you stand up, you can fight, you're not going to get taken down, all this kind of silliness. And I thought to myself, that there's two people in this situation. The one who goes back under the bubble and says, well, I won't let anybody take me down. And then there's the person who says, I better learn how to do this or I'm going to die one day, when I face a guy who knows what he's doing. So that's when I started getting really serious about jiu-jitsu. So as soon as I got back from Argentina, I started looking for a school. I found Marco Santos Machado Academy. I started training there. And about maybe 6 months later or so, I think you showed up. And yeah, that was I think I got my blue belt at that point. I'm not sure if I had it or not.
No, when we started, we were both white belts, but But
oh, okay.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
I think maybe I was there. Maybe I was there for about 3 months. Then
Yeah,
or
yeah,
so, or
yeah. I
4
remember you
months.
saying that
And
you only been there a few months before me. Yeah, because I remember we got
Right.
yeah, and yeah, I remember there was this small room and the walls. I mean, really small. I mean, we're in a small studio right now, and actually, the room we were in was not much bigger than the studio we're in now, and then we'd always bump up against the walls, and it was a fun place. Unfortunately, then 9/11 happened, and the place was destroyed, but because it was right near the towers. Yeah, and or was polluted. I should say the building is still there, but then we moved to 36th Street, and then we kept training there for a while. So, but it's a great fun odyssey. And you know, it's funny. You said I didn't really use the rack guard on you. So this is kind of bad. This is where I have to confess. So there's certain things that I would hold back, not showing you. I'm going to use this on Andreas when I really, really need it.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to keep these weapons over here when I'm really in trouble.
See, the thing is, I knew you were doing that, but I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't have the same sort of innovative spark, I think, that you do. I would try. I'm more of like I find some bread and butter move and I train it to death until I kind of feel like it's really there for me, and then I would just use it. And so it's like everybody knew my stuff, basically. Everybody knew what I was going to do. It was whether or not, I could pull it off, or they would, pull off what they wanted to do. I didn't have too much of that sort of sneaky stuff going on, but I knew you did, and that was always the fear
sneaky,
with Renee. It's like, oh man, what's he going to pull out this
Why is
week?
everybody agreeing that I'm sneaky? Why is that? Why is wherever I go I get sneaky? What's going on here? But
well, I think the thing is, let's reframe it. It's not sneaky. It's you are guileful. You are ready and willing to. It's the art of misdirection, the art of surprise. It's kind of like this. You're trying to pull off a magic trick, and the thing is, you can't let other people see how the magic trick is done, or it doesn't work. Right.
And
that's
exactly.
what you're doing.
No. It's funny. I tell my students that all the time. I'm like, the first move, they're going to understand exactly what you're doing, and they're going to stop. Even if they're an idiot, they're going to feel force going forward or backward or wherever, and they're going to try to stop that force. So the first move is never what works. The first move is the camouflage for the second and third moves. And that's really like, it's the third move for me usually that's the one I really want to get you with. So it's the first, the second. Right. The second is the destabilization. The first is the trick, the opening, the camouflage. The second is the destabilization. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The third is where I get you. That's what I really want. So that's always how I think.
Right.
Especially
I totally agree.
That's
interesting too. And this is a point that I think you kind of do implicitly, but not everybody gets. And it's something I learned early is that when you're doing that first move, if it's your feint has to be and feel like a legitimate attack, or you're not going to get the response you want. And that's one thing that you always do effectively. It's never like, oh, I'm going to do this first move and then I'm just going to jump into the next thing. You make the person feel like they're in danger enough that they move, and that's when they get caught in the trap, which not everybody does so well. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's just the experience, I think. And I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm nothing special. But the thing is, I did come into training with the bum leg, and, I had to have something to equalize it, to make it work. And I said, if I'm not being tricky, then I'm going to get smashed, so that's the one thing I have is my mind. So let me use that, so,
and ultimately in the long run, it's the better way to go. I always say, that if and when I get back to jiu-jitsu because of, various reasons, years of injuries and things, I've been away, but if and when I get back to jiu-jitsu, I will always approach it with the attitude that if I'm not able to do this move that I'm learning when I'm 80, I really don't want to learn it. Yeah. Because there's this, you have to be able to protect your body. You have to be able to work kind of like effectively and defensively in terms of making yourself last as long as possible. Absolutely. And
Absolutely, and it's also just makes the journey funner, more fun, because you know that you can continue as going forward. There's certain moves that I absolutely will not do. One is like a really heavy invert, putting all the weight on my neck. I'm like, I am not going to do that because I can't do that anymore. And if I do it, my neck is going to be sore. And also, when I'm 60, I'm almost 50 now. When I'm 60, my neck is going to be shot. So this is just not what I'm going to do. If I can't, you're right. If I can't do it when you're 80, then I'm not going to do it. But a few. Let's just. I have a fun gym story, but I want to. We have all these great memories, but one last thing. What's a fun gym story that you remember really well from our training that kind of sticks with you? I have one. I have one, and it's a really good story. But anyway, you go.
Okay,
you
well,
you go first.
I gotta refresh my memory. I wasn't expecting this question. I have to think about that one. There's so many. So I gotta think
there's so many. There's so many. But I would say that my happiest memory, funny now that I got angry at you because at the time, was when you picking up my shoulders, and I really felt that we were like a team, But I also remember when, because there was a time when Marcos left New York, and then we were training under Hudolfo. And I remember that time, and it was not a positive experience. And we got each other together through that. And this instructor was he was young and inexperienced, and also I think he had some ideas of what training should be, and they weren't healthy. They're a little toxic. And one this is actually a bad story where this is not the one I was thinking to tell, but he told me, because he was pissed at you, he told me to attack your bad arm. I remember he told me that, and I wouldn't do it, and I would not do it. And he said, I'm going to kick you out of the academy if you don't attack his bad arm. And it was like a Karate Kid moment. It was literally at a Karate Kid. And I'm like, wow. I'm not fucking doing that. And because whatever you're saying to me means absolutely nothing compared to the friendship that I have for Andres. I would never do that. And you're asking me to do that is ridiculous. And that was one time where I'm like, I choose Andreas over you 100% of the time. And, I remember that. That wasn't what I was going to say, but that was one tough time. And then Marcos wound up coming back, and everything was back to hunky-dory fun. And then we were back training again. But the happy story is when I came back, Marcos tested me again for my blue belt, because Rodolfo could give me my blue belt, but I returned it and I came back as a white belt. But I remember the Shark Tank, and the fun thing is, so we're having this 20-man roll for the blue belt exam, and on the Shark Tank, who does Marcos say for the last? He's like, "Oh, Andreas, come up!" I'm like, "Oh, son of a bitch." And my heart sank, and I'd actually tapped everybody up until that point, and I'm like, fuck. And of course you get me, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it's like, it is what it is. Can't have a perfect record. So, but that was my fun memory, but and it's,
well, I got it.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry, go ahead. No, finish what you were saying.
No, I'm done. It's good.
Well, I was just going to say that I have so many incredible memories of being there. And I think, for me, it's not funny per se, but it's like the happiest memories for me are probably the ones where things were just the training was just so brutal. Like Marcos used to love to do, the training of the lion back in the early days. And we do these crazy trainings. I remember, doing the training of the lion, and he put one person down. Like I like an idiot, I learned to volunteer early, in my martial arts career. So I would always volunteer for stuff. He's like, okay, I need a volunteer to go there. So I did this training of the lion, and it's like me getting mangled by like Gauche, like Patrick, like
all these big dudes.
I think
for the
Barney was there. You were there. Like a couple of other guys. This guy he called Madame Sata. I can't remember his name. Mike something.
Yeah.
This was before Dave was there, but basically everybody was, and you just get beaten down and beaten down and beaten down to the point where you can't even really lift your arms. And then of course Marcos and Marcio would have their turn.
Yeah, right.
On you
the black belts would be the last match. You're like, oh.
Right. And so you're just getting these beat downs. And I just remember, it's like after that happened, you do 2 or 3 of those, you come out of there. It's this gauntlet just somehow just transforms you as a fighter. You just become a different fighter. You get beat down enough. It becomes this really hard kernel inside of you that is so tough to break after that, because it just, you're like, you've had worse. How bad the fight is, you've had it worse in your academy, and that's, I think, somehow makes you so much tougher. And there's things like that, and then there's also the things we do where, like, I remember watching you go through this. I went through it where it's like Marcos would say, okay, you get down there, and then he would stick like 3 white belts on you or 3 blue belts or something. So 3 guys at a time on one trying to tap you.
Exactly.
Those were amazing.
3 on 1.
Or the wars. Remember when we'd have half the team and half the team, and you just go to war, and everybody's trying to tap everybody else, and like one person's like the captain, and you're just trying to like.
I do it in my academy now too. It's like you split the entire class into 2 groups, and you give a team captain, and then everybody attacks each other, and it could be 2 on 1, 3 on 1.
Right.
It's this gang war. It's just, you have to wait till the skill is high, but gang war is so much fun. And yeah, I remember it's like, wow, I have 1 white belt on one leg, grabbing one of my legs. I have 1 white belt grabbing my other leg. I have 1 white belt grabbing my arm. I have another white belt grabbing the other arm, and another one's about to jump on my neck. What do I do here?
Wow.
This is terrible.
Yeah. It's amazing too, because you're also like, at that point, you're a blue belt, so you think, oh, I'm not going to get tapped by any more white belts, and you're like, oh, I'm too good for this, and you just have this attitude, and you're fighting like anything to get out of there, like you're just like a wild animal trying to get out of that.
I totally remember that. Those are really, really awesome times. That is fantastic. But anyway,
I want to talk about your book for a second.
Yes, exactly.
So I admittedly and unfortunately have not had a chance to read it yet, but I guarantee you I will be reading it after doing some research on the book. It sounds like an amazing journey.
Thank you.
During my research, I came across a review. I don't know.
The book's name is Odyssey to Ushuaia.
Yeah. And I don't know if you read the reviews. Some people say don't read the reviews, but this review was so amazing that I'm not going to say the person's name, but I want to just read a snippet of it. And it starts off with, I wanted to give this book 1 star, but I couldn't. And they mentioned that the book has excessive infantile, childish sexual behavior and over-the-top excessive drinking, but the writing was really good. That is a great review.
Wow.
No, and you are a tremendous, I'll be honest also, I'm very jealous of you in a lot of ways, Andres. One is because your skill as a wordsmith is just unbelievable, and you are doing what you need to do. You are just an amazing writer. And guys, anybody who has a chance to pick up this book, it's a very meaningful book for me. And it's I think we live these martial arts lives because we want to have something that takes us out of our humdrum, kind of daily quotidian existence. And what you did is you did something even more intense. You went on a motorcycle and drove across, continents and through dangerous areas. And it was just an amazing, it's an odyssey. It really is an odyssey. And all the adventures you regale of your trips and the people have to read it. I don't want to spoil too much, but, one, it is very well written and it's extraordinarily funny. And it's inspiring too that, I think for people to see a martial arts spirit exemplified in off the mat, where I'm going to challenge myself. I'm to leave a life of a strenuous life, as Theodore Roosevelt said. And to me, that's what it's about, is doing something extraordinary. And it's amazing. But anyway, what was the inception of this amazing travel?
Oh, thank you, guys. Thanks, Renee. Well, the thing is, the book is called Odyssey to Ushuaia, and the idea was I had this gap year before medical school, and I thought, I'd like to go to Argentina and see my family, my roots. My parents came from Argentina. I was born and raised here with my siblings, but if my family hadn't traveled here, I would have been raised in Argentina, with like all my cousins. I have like 30 cousins down there. So I thought I want to go there and see my family. I want to spend time. I thought it'd be nice to have a vehicle there, but motorcycles, things are so expensive in Argentina. It'd be cheaper to buy one here and bring it. And then I thought, well, how am I going to do that? Maybe I could drive it there. It was a crazy conception of why I would think this made sense logically. That this would be easier than flying there, buying a bike, and then selling it when I leave. Like that would have been significantly easier, and I would have spent a lot longer in Argentina with my family.
It wouldn't have been as much fun.
Sorry, go ahead.
It wouldn't have been as much fun.
Exactly, it wouldn't have been as much fun. And once the idea got in my head, I kind of thought, I really want to do this, and so I started figuring out how to do it, trying to plan it. And I didn't have much money. I didn't have anything really in terms of motorcycling experience at all. To speak
you had
of.
no experience with a motorcycle. Really?
No, I didn't have a motorcycle. I had nothing. I thought, this is what I want to do. I set my mind to it. My dad had been a motorcyclist. He had been big into bikes. He had been he was a doctor who was also very gifted mechanically. He could take apart his bikes and fix them and put things back together, etc. And I thought, this is something I'd like to do too. So I decided to get a license. I took a motorcycle safety foundation rider course, which I recommend for anybody who ever wants to ride a bike. And I started trying to save up for it. I didn't have a way to buy a bike easily, so I don't tell anybody. I found a way creatively to use student loans to apply that to the purchase of a motorcycle.
And you call me sneaky.
What's
you were very guileful yourself.
Yeah. Well, I guess we all, when the need arises, we do what we must.
Yes.
But basically, my attitude at that point was, the dream sort of took me over, and I knew I was going to do it. If I had to ride a scooter and wear a garbage bag for a coat, I was going. Some way or another, I was getting down there on a bike. I knew it, and so I kind of got lucky. I found the resources. I used credit cards. I sold everything I had, my car, my guitar, like anything I had, basically to fund this trip, and I went for it. And I also was inspired by the story of Emilio Scotto, this Argentine guy who had $300 cash and a Honda Goldwing, and he traveled around the world. I think he holds the Guinness World Record. I think he went around maybe 7 times.
Oh my God! Emilio Scotto.
He did it.
I have to look that up.
Emilio Scotto. Yeah, and every time he saw that he was running low on funds, he would stop somewhere, start working, make a bunch of money, and then just travel and keep going. And that's what he did everywhere he went. And he actually met his wife that way. He converted to Islam along the way. He had a baby. He was riding with a baby and a wife on his motorcycle. I mean, it's just crazy. He just wanted to keep going. So anyway, the stories like that, I thought, geez, if this guy could do it with such limited resources, I can do this. So that's kind of how it all started.
So what, tell us, without spoiling too much of the book, tell us some of the major moments of the trip. That some were dangerous, I know, some were funny, some were but give us some your perspective on the journey and what you took from it as well.
Sure. Well, there's just so much. I mean, it was a life-changing experience, and one that I could never replace in terms of who I am and what I've done. It informs so much of who I am now because of what I saw and did. And there's things like I hit a truck head on at one point in the the Altiplano in the highlands of Peru, and at that point I thought maybe this is it for me. I was slamming on my brakes and the truck was slamming on its brakes, and we were both coming around a corner on the same single dirt kind of road, and there was nowhere to go, and I just slid right into it coming down this hill with all the weight of my bike, and I had been going too fast and he was going way too fast, and we collided. Fortunately, I didn't die, obviously, and I wasn't seriously injured in any way, but it shook me, and the bike had been, the forks had been bent back, but it could still be ridden, so I kind of hobbled and limped into Peru and into Lima and got there to get the bike fixed. And incidentally, that didn't kill me, but the fixing of the bike almost did. For some reason, these guys in the bike shop were like, "Oh yeah, we oiled up your bike, so it looks really good." And I was like, "What?" And they had covered my entire motorcycle with a sheen of oil. And I think what happened is somebody must have spilled oil on the bike, and then they just try to make it like they were doing it. Well,
you're welcome.
Thanks.
Right. And the thing is I leave to ride away, and as I'm riding away, I go to press my brakes at a red light, and I can't stop because they'd gotten oil all over my discs as well.
Oh my God.
So I slid right into this intersection and was almost killed by oncoming traffic because I couldn't stop my bike. So of course I went back there and gave him a piece of my mind. But there's many, much more positive and memorable trips too. I met incredible people. I rode with two really outstanding guys, Robert Bielish and Peter Santamaria. It's all in the book. We had many ups and downs and adventures and misadventures, and they probably wanted to murder me more than a few times because I was kind of the young and very inexperienced and foolish person on the trip versus their much more experienced riding living sort of approach to life. So I learned a lot and had a lot of fun. And if you have the interest to do anything like this in your life, I recommend it immensely. There's nothing like travel to change your perspective and to make you a more full and realized version of who you really are.
Absolutely.
There's
And
nothing else.
I want to add to that. You're absolutely right. It's travel, and I think because travel takes you so much out of your comfort zone, and you have to head on in a place of submissiveness, because it is not your culture, it's not your country. You have to confront different ways of doing things, different things, and you have to adapt. And it forces you to change your conception of the world. Like I said, the strenuous life. Sometimes these strenuous actions, whether it's a trip, whether it's the martial journey, whatever it is, takes you out of this box that you're in and puts you into a much more interesting, much more self-actualized box, where you become a better version of yourself, a more keyed in person. And definitely, like you said, it's a life-changing moment for you. That's why it's so inspirational, that you go and do these hard things. Why do we do it? Because it's hard. Why do we go to the moon?
Sure.
Because it's hard. It's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. And to me, that's what martial arts is about. It's about constantly stepping on the mat and challenging yourself and going out of that comfort zone, always facing up to something that's scary, that's dangerous, that's challenging, that puts you in a spot where you feel insecure, this and that. And just and you grow from it, and that's how you grow. That's life. That is how you grow. You don't grow by sitting on the couch and eating Doritos and watching Netflix.
You grow bigger.
You grow bigger. Yes, that you do grow bigger.
Right.
But Matt, you had some questions for Andreas.
Did you have any instances where you were on the road where your martial experience came in handy?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask him like the joke questions.
Those are just for fun.
Oh, okay.
That was misdirection.
Okay. Well, I did have a couple of moments where I thought things might get hairy, and I was glad that I had some experience. One was at a border crossing in, I think it was in El Salvador, and I didn't know anybody at that point. I had gotten separated briefly from Robert and Peter, and I decided in my youthful silliness to try to wait around to spend some time with a young lady I had met, and she was traveling through there, and I thought I would be able to meet up with her again. And anyway, it was an ill-advised idea, and I ended up almost getting separated. I got separated from them, and so then at this intersection, at this place, these incredibly stressful border crossings were the bane of every traveler's existence. You didn't want to be there. You're going to be tied up, and they're going to try to take advantage of you and get your resources from you, whatever they were, whatever they perceived you to have. They wanted to get it from you, basically. And so there's bribes and all these kinds of things that were expected. So you just had to deal with all of that to begin with. Then on top of it, you have this kind of strange people that are coming through. And one of these was this guy who had come through pulling, he looked like some kind of mechanic. He had been pulling a truck with all of these broken down cars behind it. He would go to the United States and buy a bunch of beat up cars and then try to pull them down through the countries with their titles and everything, which made his life miserable. So he looked mad. He basically looked really upset and unhappy. And I remember standing in line to do this thing. This guy looked like he wanted to kill somebody, and he comes walking over towards me, and I thought, oh man, is this the day that I'm going to get, murdered in in public by somebody because I'm an American or something? And he came over, and next thing you know, he started talking to me and chatting me up in English. And he said, I returned to him in Spanish, and he said, oh, don't speak Spanish. Then these guys can listen in and they think they know what, I'm saying. I don't want them to know anything about me. But, so I quickly realized that he was on my side, not their side, and that he wanted to be a friend, not an enemy. So that was a moment where I thought I might need it, but it ended up being nothing. I don't know if that's kind of a dull story now.
No, not at all. No, but I mean, there's a lot of times where you sense a threat, and you're very thankful that you have those experiences, even if the threat doesn't materialize, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
go
ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, I rode a motorcycle for about maybe like 30 seconds, and my butt vibrated for about 10 minutes after that. Like, have you recovered yet from that intense ride? Or was it just I was on a really bad motorcycle? I don't know.
Here's the question: what kind of bike were you on?
I have no idea. Must have been a bad one. Huh?
Well, different motorcycles obviously have different comfort factors, and I mean, if you're on like a racing motorcycle, like one of these Japanese racing bikes, they're going to vibrate a lot. They have very, very thin kind of plank seats, very little cushion. They're designed to be kind of like leaning way over, so all the weight's on your wrists and on your butt, and your knees are cramped. And they're meant for speed. They're not meant for comfort, versus something else. The bike I was on is called the Dual Sport. It's a Kawasaki KLR 650. Just an amazing, wonderful, incredibly inexpensive and bulletproof bike. It had a single cylinder. They call it a thumper because it just goes dun, 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 And so the smartest purchase I think I made before I left was a replacement saddle for the bike. The one I got was made by Corbin Saddles, and the way I met Mike Corbin, actually, I think is his name, and I met him when I went through on a tour around the U.S. later on my bike. I met him at his factory, and I was chatting him up and talking about what he does, and he got the design idea for Corbin Saddles because you look at these guys who ride tractors out all day in the fields in the Midwest, and they ride all day long, and they're riding on these old metal tractor seats. And the way they did it was that the tractor seat was shaped in the curvature to match your bottom, So the design of these seats, they start with that, having the shape being, sort of conforming to the body. And then from that, they put on the memory foam and all these other, vibrational dampening things, But yeah, it's just starting from a basic design principle of the human body, which is where all good design really should begin if you're designing something to be used by people, right? So it was a life-saving and a butt-saving experience. But believe me, there were plenty of days when I rode 1,000-mile days and or 800-mile days, and it was like, this is get me off this bike. I've been on it for 16 hours, and it's only stopping to eat and use the restroom and get me off this bike. There were definitely days like that.
Wow. I couldn't imagine doing it. So when's your next trip planned? Are you going to go to another continent sometime soon? Brian?
It's interesting. The trips I do, my most recent trip, I went with my fiance to South Africa, and that was an incredible experience. And
did you go on a motorcycle there too?
No, but I did. We did tool around quite a bit, and it was fun learning to drive stick shift left-handed.
Right, because on the other side,
of the road. Yeah. Right, and they don't have automatics there, of course. So I was really grateful that I had spent basically my whole life driving stick, so it came in handy there. But it was weird to get used to, the different placement of the shifter and all that. But anyway, the next, the majority of travel I kind of do, I would say, is probably more in my imagination these days. As I write fiction, I'm working on a novel right now, set in the 1800s in Argentina, and I travel from the seat of my chair in my mind every day, trying to figure out that story, basically.
Well, that's one I can't wait to read it. But so anybody wants to, do you have a website or anything, Andres, or just they should just look you up on Amazon, or how can they buy your books?
Well, you mentioned multiple books. The truth is, I only have that one book right now, Odyssey to Ushuaia. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it, online. I don't, or you can go to the Chicago Review Press or IPG Books and buy it directly from their website as well. That's the publisher. But I don't have a website currently for my own writing. You can find a couple of short stories and things that I've written more recently if you're interested, I think, online. But I'm not really kind of pushing that angle of it right now. It's sort of like, I know that we're on the Martial Podcast and we're talking about all our experiences in martial arts, but I technically don't consider myself a martial artist anymore, in the sense that I know I am at heart, but a martial artist, a fighter, is somebody who trains every day. You're training, and not every day per se, but you're training consistently, or you're preparing yourself always to be at your best. And in the same way, if you're a writer, you write. And for me, the kind of whole publicity and thinking about that stuff, I got caught up in that when I went to graduate school and was thinking too much about those things. I came to the Midwest for my grad program, and I found myself too concerned about, too distracted by those things. And
Yeah.
the reality is that, you know, if I want to be a writer, I have to write.
Absolutely.
And that's where I'm at now. So mentally, I'm working on that process. I'm trying to get back into the depth of my writing. You know, since being here, I've had a son. I've had various things happen and transpire in my life that have kind of changed the reality of my day-to-day living. So getting back to having writing be a primary focus of my days is where I'm at. And as soon as I get a published book and it's, you know, or a book published and I get it put out there, I'll start thinking more about, you know, the kind of marketing end of it, publicity end of it. But for now,
I totally agree
business.
with you. I totally agree with you. You know, it's funny. I just mentioned that, but you know, unfortunately, part of MMA right now is selling yourself as a fighter. So a lot of the fighters go on Instagram or this and that. But at the end of the day, it's the work you put in the gym day in, day out, especially when you don't want to. And it's that you don't want to go. And then, you know, and I both know there are days that we didn't want to go to the gym, but one of us called the other person, hey, you want to train? Okay, all right, let's train. And then you're always better for it. But it's the day in, day out commitment to your craft. And in that way, you're an artist. And whether you're a martial artist or a literary artist, it is that commitment to your craft over and over again to the honing of it that makes you or breaks you. And, you know, I respect that you understand that you're in this place where you have to focus on the craft and you have to just every day, just do it, just put the work in. And it's not about Instagram. It's not about Facebook. It's not about websites. It's about sitting in front of on the mats doing the work or sitting in front of the computer and doing the work and just typing things out. Yeah, no, my instructor in Japan, Professor Hirata Kanai had a great quote, and he said, consistency is the foundation of your strength. And to me, that's everything what is martial arts, but everything. It's like consistency. It's not effort. I mean, it's not talent. I'm sorry. It's not talent. It's effort and consistency over and over again. It's one of the reasons why I tell people, even when they're injured, try to come to academy and do something, because just the consistent day in, day out method. And you were just the other day, we were talking about, this interesting book called Atomic Habits, and how, like, you know, it's the way to change your life is by making these micro changes in your habits over and over again to get a consistent growth. It's like, even if it's 0.1%, if you're 0.1% every single day, 7 days a week, hey, over time that adds up, you know? And, it's going to exponentially grow at some point, you know? And, anyway, I appreciate
it's so funny. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I totally agree with you. And it's so funny you say that, because I look at the guys, for example, who, you know, I was always training like my pants were on fire. Oh, I got to train. I got to go train. and oh, I'm hurt. Who cares? I'm going to go back to training. I basically put myself into such a state of disrepair physically from training through injuries and hurting myself and keeping training and stuff that I kind of pushed myself out of the game in some ways after, you know, I had multiple surgeries for my knees or for my knee and my shoulders and things like that. And of course, at that point, I was also focusing on my writing. So it wasn't entirely that I didn't want to do it. I absolutely did. But it became this thing, like, you know, I look at those guys who trained, you know, consistently 3 days a week, you know, like Greg, for example, would train 3 days a week, and that's all he could do. He had his job, he had his wife, he had his kids.
But it's 3 days a week every single day. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I have another friend. The same thing is I call Matt MRC, and MRC is the same thing. He's not a black belt yet, but he will be soon. He trains at Marcelo's now. But he's like he's very he has a very serious job. So he puts in his 3 days a week, but he never misses those 3 days a week. And, you know, that's a path for other people. Now, I was different, and I'm definitely, you and I are the same. We're kind of obsessive compulsive. But at the same time, you know, that consistency is the same for us. You know, it's you don't want the burning the candle twice as bright and then half as long. So you want to burn that candle, but keep it consistent over time, you know? And, and training through injuries is important in some way, but in a smart way that you let them heal, you know? So I say, okay, if you have an ankle injury, just sit on your butt and work wrist locks, but don't put weight on your ankle. You know, if you have a wrist injury, just work your triangles, but don't do anything with the wrist, and take it nice and slow and steady, and train at the pace that you can. You know, that being said, you and I both are not like that. I know we're both the same.
And it's hard because, the other side of it too is that we loved doing it and we love what we do. And so it's like you're sitting there, all your friends are there. At that point, I mean, basically, when I was in New York, all of my friends were martial artists. That's who I knew, and it's like, if you don't go to class, you're missing a huge part of your socialization. You're not hanging out with people that you care about. You don't see what's going on with their lives. You're also not getting the high that you get normally from training. And it's like, I remember, drive to class and I'd be upset with the traffic and be like, oh, this guy's in my way and whatever, and go there, I'd get whooped and I'd just be totally spent. I'd drive home, somebody would cut me off and I'd be like, go ahead, it's all good, and waving to them, completely, at peace with everything in the world, because it was this incredibly transformative sort of fulfilling thing that we did, that if you didn't get your fix, it was heartbreaking. I couldn't take it. I loved to go and train. So when I was injured, I was just devastated and so frustrated and couldn't train, and I pushed it because I wanted to get back there,
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think that's a great moment to break off. Speaking of training, I actually have to go and train, but
of course.
It is so great talking with you and reminiscing. And like I said, I'm not the martial artist. I wouldn't be the martial artist I am today without you. And you're such an important part of my martial journey. And I tell you, you don't even know, but I talk to my students about you all the time and saying, this guy was here for me. And you need someone like that. And this is what Andreas taught me. And even this is here. And I have a couple of names of techniques. I said, this is Andreas's technique. This is what he did. And as a presence in my martial journey, there are very few people who come as close to you in my life. And I'm just truly thankful for that. And just as to our listeners, whatever martial art you're doing, like we see the martial journey on TV, and that's so false, but it's always like the guy goes up on top of the mountain, does his forms, and then comes down and he kills everybody. And that is so false, because you're always part of a team. Martial arts and prize fighting, while it's the only person standing in the ring, behind that guy is a whole team of people, and particularly his number one training partner. And while I don't like him very much, Conor McGregor, has his Artem Lobov is his guy. And you look at any successful guy, he has his main training partner, the guy who day in, day out is there for him. And you can't make it without these people. Of course you need a teacher and instructor, of course. But, if you don't have that person that is always sitting there for you, helping you to get the work in, you're never going to get there. And,
right.
And so it's to all those people training out there, whatever martial art, whether it's Taekwondo, Jiu-Jitsu, karate, judo, it's so much better in terms of getting technically excellent, but it's so much more enriching in terms of the joyfulness of training and the camaraderie of making a connection, a strong connection with another training partner. So and so that's just, I want to say thanks.
Well, Renee, you honor me, and I couldn't agree more. I'm not anywhere. I'm not in your league anymore. If we ever trained, I mean, you just murder me these days. But everything that I have, from martial arts, I credit to everybody that I've trained with, and you are such an incredibly important piece of that. And and for years it was always, I'd be training and I'd be thinking to myself, oh man, I can get away with this on this person, but would it work on Renee? It was always the test. Can I pull this off on Renee? If I can do it on Renee, I maybe have something here. And so this is the kind of stuff that, we don't always think about, but you're absolutely right. It's so critical to who we are. And I feel the same exact way. And I'm extremely grateful and humbled that you feel this way about me. It's, I'm touched, man.
Oh, thank you. There are many nights, late nights at 2 a.m. How the frickin' hell did he catch me? So same here. Yeah. But it's awesome journey. And I'm hoping you come to New York again. And then last time you were here, of course, we unfortunately didn't get to train too much. We just got some food, but I hope you come to New York again. And, maybe you can show some techniques to my students, and, we can share the mats again, something like that.
Well, we'll see if I can remember any.
All right,
it's been a while. But I think I do intend one day to get back to training, and when I do, you'll be the first to know. I'll be happy to go there and get my butt kicked by you again and again, like the old days.
Thanks, my friend. Great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
You too. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Renee.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. So great session. And
I can't wait to read a book. I got a new book to read.
Yeah, I know. And again, it's Odyssey to Ushuaia, and it's by Andrés Carlstein. And I really, really recommend it. It's a phenomenal book. Right? And I guess that's it for today.
That's it.
And we got some big fights coming up this weekend.
We got big bets too, don't we?
Big bet. Oh, yeah. What bet do we have?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I'm getting side-eye from the missus about bets. I'm not allowed to make bets anymore. I won the last one.
You won the last one, see?
Who's coming up?
He's coming up.
Holloway this weekend.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Holloway. Right. That's a good one. Yeah. So Holloway versus Edgar. And it's also on the same card. It's Cyborg versus Felicia Spencer. And it's a lot of some newer guys on the card.
A lopsided card. Easy wins there. Holloway Cyborg all day.
All right. So I think Holloway's gonna win it. But I'll take Frank Edgar.
Okay.
I'll take Frank Edgar. So we bet?
What can I bet?
I don't know. You choose.
I can't bet anything. I'll bet you. I don't know.
Okay, but what do you also coming up on August 3rd, the one after, is Covington versus Lawler. Who do you got on that one?
Lawler.
Yeah, Lawler. God, I hope Lawler wins. I really, really, really hope he wins.
Is that just because you hate Covington? Or?
God damn, I hate that guy. But yeah, okay. So, but okay, I'll take Edgar, and this really irks me because I'm not a big Edgar fan for other reasons, which
we can't talk about on air.
Off air, yes.
That's fine.
All right, my friend. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, sir. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.